Thank you, everybody, for showing up today for this interesting class. We've never done a Feldenkrais class before at Instill, and it's a form of mindful movement. So there's every reason that we should be having a Feldenkrais class, and I'm really looking forward to this. Alison has been involved with Instill for quite some time through attending our daily meditations and a couple of other things, I think. And very glad to have her here all the way from, is it Bethesda in Maryland?
Right next to Bethesda, yeah, like a mile from Bethesda, Rockville, Bethesda area. Yes.
There you go. I'm very glad to have her coming all the way from there to share something that's very close to her heart. And we'll be talking a little later about a series of Feldenkrais classes through November that Alison will also be leading, if this is something that works for you. So thank you very much, Alison. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Jamie, and thank you, Instill Mindfulness, for having this tonight. I'm really excited to be here. So yes, as you said, Feldenkrais is near and dear to my heart. I discovered it between 20 and 30 years ago and have been doing it ever since. And I'll talk a little bit about Feldenkrais so you know what to expect tonight. And then we'll do some movement. I'll guide you through the movement, and then we'll talk again before we close. So Feldenkrais is named after Moshe Feldenkrais. You may have seen a little bit about it in the online description. Moshe Feldenkrais brought it to this country in the 70s. He passed away in the 80s, so it's been around for some time. And Feldenkrais can be done one-on-one with individuals or in group classes. And Moshe Feldenkrais was a very high-level judo master. He worked with the founder of judo. There are some roots of judo and, I don't know how to say it, jiu-jitsu in Feldenkrais, as well as he was a very high-level physicist. He worked with the Curies. So there's a lot in it about how the body moves. And Moshe Feldenkrais watched infants from the time they were born, how they learned to move, from rolling over to eventually crawling, walking, etc. So he applied that knowledge of how all those three things work together to help people move better. He himself had a very severe knee injury. He needed surgery. In those days, there was no surgery for his injury. And he essentially taught himself how to walk again. He eventually began doing it with others, one-on-one, and teaching it in group classes, and called it the Feldenkrais method. So the group classes, which we have today, are called Awareness Through Movement Lessons. And Feldenkrais works by way of what's called, I'm blanking on the word. I want to say neurobiology, but that's not the word. It's it'll come to me later. Neuroplasticity. Essentially, the brain's ability to learn. The brain learns, that's what the brain does. And so we're working with the body, but there's a component, and the primary component, how the brain is learning. And today, you'll see that I'm asking questions throughout the movements. What are you noticing? What about this? What about that? And the point is not to get the answers right. And you might not even have an answer, and that's okay. It's simply to bring your awareness to something. And by simply bringing your awareness to the question, this changes will start to happen in the brain and in the body. You'll see as we go along. And there's a couple things I'll say so you know what to expect today. One, today's lesson will be lying on the floor. So if you have a carpet or a comfortable yoga mat, you may want to put a blanket on top of the yoga mat so it's a bit softer. You don't need a soft surface, but it might just be more comfortable because you'll be on your back for quite a long time. You could use a bed if you absolutely need to. I wouldn't recommend it because the bed will absorb the movement, but if you need it, it will still work. There's a couple rules, so 2 rules to keep in mind, and I'll bring you back to them. If you forget them, it's okay, throughout the lesson. One, everything should feel comfortable. So no pain, no discomfort. If something feels uncomfortable, or you think it might even be uncomfortable, make the movement smaller or make it slower. Okay, so that's rule number one. Everything should be comfortable. Rule number two, rest whenever you need to. You'll notice that I direct you to rest very, very frequently. In Feldenkrais lessons, there's a lot of rests. And there's reasons for that. But if you need to rest sooner, if your arms are getting tired or your legs are getting tired, please rest. Okay, so in terms of being comfortable and resting, if you need to modify a movement, modify it. And Feldenkrais, sometimes people imagine movements. You can imagine it and it will still have an effect. Okay, so if you're willing to keep your camera on, and if you're at an angle where I can see you, in Feldenkrais, the teacher teaches according to what they see. So I have a sequence of movements, a lesson that I'll be saying, but if I see you doing something, I may shift what I'm teaching. So if anyone's willing to keep the camera on, that's great. If not, we'll go with cameras off. And wait a minute. Yes, okay. And if it's possible to see a side view of you, that's great. If it's not possible, any view will work. Thank you so much for putting cameras on. Okay, I appreciate that. All right. So essentially, if I see you doing something and you're going very quickly and it'd be more beneficial to go slowly, I might say that. Or if, yeah, there's a whole variety of things. But if I see, I'll change what I'm teaching, a whole variety of things. All right, great. Thank you so much for having cameras on. And finally, if you have any questions as we go along, just unmute yourself and ask, please. Okay, so generally the movements are very slow and very small and repeated. And again, I'll direct you. You don't have to worry about it. Can I see a show of hands? Has anyone done Feldenkrais before? You have. Okay. No. All right. Is there anyone who has difficulty lying on your back? Today's lesson will be lying on the back. No. Okay. All right. Anyone who has severe pain at the moment? Okay. All right. Great. All right. Any questions before we go to the movements? No. All right. Okay. So Feldenkrais, Moshe Feldenkrais was a scientist, and so pretty much every awareness through movement lesson begins with what we call a reference movement. So you'll notice that I suggest a movement at the beginning, and I take you through what we call a scan, and we will come back to that later and see what's different, noticing what's different. All right, so I'm going to ask you first, if you could actually stand up briefly. If you could stand up, and I don't have to see when you're standing, and I don't need to see when you're walking. It's really only when you're lying down for the lesson. So stand up, and as you're standing and arriving from everything you've done today and wherever you come from to be here now, just notice how you are in this moment, and notice what feels easy or difficult in your body, or maybe even in your mind or heart. So wherever you are, whatever it is, you don't have to change anything, but just noticing. And you can even take a couple steps or a few steps, walk around a little bit, and what feels good or what feels heavy, what feels tense, if anything's tense. And I'm going to start mentioning a couple things, a few body parts. How do your shoulders feel as you walk or stand? How does your spine feel? And there's no right answer. You don't have to change anything. Again, just noticing. And how's your breath? And how is your, I'm going to say midline. When I say midline, what do you notice? And you might have no sense of any midline, and that's totally fine. Or you may have a really strong sense of a midline. This particular Feldenkrais awareness through movement lesson is called clarity of the midline. So I may come back to that later, that idea of midline. Okay, and if you could please come lie on your back. And if you're comfortable having your legs long, have your legs long. And if you'd like to bend your knees, if that's easier on your low back, then please bend your knees. Okay. So looks like most of you are comfortable having your legs long. Okay, that's helpful for me to know. And Lynn, your background, a couple of you, your background is blurred. So it's a little, if you want me to see you, you may need to unblur the background. And I promise I won't judge you if there's like stuff on your floor or whatever.
I don't think that I can't get my computer because I have a desktop and I can't adjust it to the floor level.
Okay, I can see you a little bit and that's great.
Okay.
I can see you a little bit and that's great. Yeah. And if I have been the more than half the class that I can see, that's super helpful. So if there's one or two people I don't see, it's really fine. Okay, I'm just waiting for one more person to lie down. Oh, that's actually great, Lynn. That's great. That works really well. Okay. And so if you're comfortable having your legs long, and once again, just noticing, how are you in this moment? And how does the floor meet you? And how do you meet the floor? And if you have support under your head, I see if someone has a couple pillows. If you need the pillows, please do use your pillows. If you don't need them, you may want to reduce them, use a little less, or you can use towels under your head. So in Feldenkrais, it's very common to use gardening pads because they allow for movement. They're hard and they allow for movement. If you probably don't have gardening pads on hand that are clean to put under your head right next to you. So another option would be a towel or a couple of folded towels. There's going to be a little head movement. Okay, a little bit. So starting with the scan now, just a very brief scan. Notice how each leg lies on the floor, your right leg and your left leg. One maybe feel like it's longer or contacting the floor more, and that's okay. And then moving up to your pelvis, notice the left side and right side. Again, it may be different on the two sides. Most people have differences in their body. It's totally okay. You don't have to change anything again. And then that space behind your low back. Most of you will have some space of some sort between your low back and the floor. So just notice your low back and the floor, how that is. And then your spine. Some parts of your spine will contact the floor and some won't. Your two shoulder blades. How does your left and right shoulder blade contact the floor? And your head. And just once or twice, roll your head a little one direction, a little the other. You don't have to see anything, just as if you're just exploring how does that go. And then come back to neutral. Okay. And please, one at a time, bend your knees and bring your feet to standing. So your feet will be flat on the floor and your knees will be towards the ceiling. And find a comfortable spot for your feet. So you may want to have your feet a little closer to you or a little further away from you or a little wider or narrower. Find a position which feels like a spot where you can keep your feet there for a little while. And as I mentioned, there will be pauses, rests throughout, so your knees will not be bent the entire time, but for a little while, and we'll come back to this position a lot. And please bring your arms towards the ceiling. So your hands will be in the direction of the ceiling, one arm and then the other arm. And then very, very lightly bring your fingertips together and allow your fingertips to meet and allow your elbows to bend a little bit. Your elbows will bend. So you create a hoop, H-O-O-P, a hoop with your arms. And some people may want their fingers to touch and some people may not want their fingers to touch. So make this hoop with as much ease and as little effort as possible. So one thing you may want to do is drop your shoulders a little bit. So this is why it's so great to have you all have your cameras on. Thank you so much. Allow your shoulders to relax a little more towards the floor and allow your elbows to be even softer. And if your wrist is straight, allow your wrist to soften. Allow your wrist to be a little more relaxed and the palms of your hands and your fingertips. So again, I'm going to repeat this phrase, let go of any effort that you can in your arms, your hands, your wrists. Great. Let go of any effort in your, I'm going to say your jaw. And if you don't know how to do that, that's okay. Just by listening, that will be useful. So if you can, let go of any effort in your jaw. Okay. And breathe. So this is a position the hands will be in off and on throughout this lesson. So again, if you need to rest, just lower your arms. I'll suggest the rest, but you can do it anytime. Okay, so in this position, start to bring your hoop, your arms a little bit to the left, and then a little back to center. And make the movement as small and as slow as you want. You're going to be repeating this movement many times throughout the evening. So once again, bring the hoop to the left a little bit, and it could be a millimeter. So when I say a little bit, it does not matter how far you go. In Feldenkrais, it's not about the destination. It really is about the journey. So bring the hoop a little to the left, and you can take some time. You may take an entire 1 Mississippi to do that, and a little back. It could be 1 Mississippi back. It could even be slower. It could be a little faster, but a pace that feels really comfortable and something you can repeat several times. So start to repeat this movement, the hoop going a little to the left and a little back to neutral. And I'm going to say, Lynn, if you can soften your fingers and your wrists a little more, maybe and your elbows. There you go. There you go. That's great. Okay. And maybe a little easier on your shoulders and your chest, actually. Great. Okay. So bringing the hoop a little to the left and a little back to neutral. Start to notice what else comes along. What happens specifically in your shoulder blades? Does one shoulder lift a little off the floor and one shoulder go more towards the floor, contact the floor more? And it might be pretty obvious for most of you which shoulder lifts a little off the floor and which contacts the floor. And can you reduce your speed by half? So half your speed, half your speed. I know if you're going slow, it's going to feel super slow, and that's okay. If it's hard to go that fast, if it's difficult or uncomfortable, then not slow, then don't. And do what you need to do. Again, you can always modify the instructions. Okay, and please lower your arms. Bring your arms down to the ground and take a rest. And if you're feeling any soreness from that in your shoulders and your neck and your back or anywhere, please tell me. That's important for me to know. Just unmute yourself or raise your hand. There we go, okay. And as you rest, you might notice there's a slight difference in your upper back between the left and right sides. And if you don't notice a difference, that's okay too. And please bring your hoop towards the ceiling again. And this time, do the same movement but bring your hoop to the right. So easily, slowly, going only as far as it feels good to you at a pace and an amount that you can repeat many times throughout the evening. And as your hoop goes to the right, once again, what happens in the back of your shoulders? What happens in the back of your shoulders? Do they change positions, and does one lift and one contact the floor more? And what happens in your head? Does your head come along at all? And if it doesn't, does it want to come along at all? Can you allow the head to come along a little bit? Can you allow your head to roll a little bit with your hoop? So that as your hoop goes to the right, you roll your head a little bit to the right. And allow it to be easy, and synchronize the head and the hoop. And allow it to be slow enough so that your eyes can come along also. Okay. And start to notice, does anything happen in your neck and the spine of your neck, so the vertebra? And is there anything below the neck and the spine? Anything turning also or not? Some of you may feel something and some may not, and that's okay. So I'm just going to ask the same question and I'm rephrasing it. What's happening in your upper vertebrae? What's happening in your upper vertebrae? And again, doesn't matter if you have an answer or not. Just notice the question. Okay. And if your elbow is coming towards the floor, I'm going to ask you to go half that amount. So there you go. That's great. Okay. So just easy, light. And then bring your arms down and let go of your hands and wrists and take a rest. And breathe. Sometimes in Feldenkrais, when there's a new movement, people hold their breath. Sometimes they don't. Just notice how your breath is now during the rest. You don't have to change your breath, just noticing it. And notice how your right shoulder contacts the floor now. Okay. And please bring your hoop towards the ceiling again. And start to bring the hoop a little to the right and a little to the left. And just do this movement once or twice. We're not going to do this movement a lot. So go through the center, a little right, a little left. And allow your head to come along if it wants to. And allow your chest to come along a little if it wants to. And allow your chest to be soft. And allow your jaw to be soft. And then lower your arms and take a brief pause. And if you'd like to lower your legs and take a rest with your legs long, please lengthen your legs. Notice how your low back contacts the floor. Now notice its relationship to the floor, how far it is compared to earlier. And notice whatever you notice. And please bend your knees, stand your feet, and bring your hoop to the ceiling. And allow the hoop to be as easy as it can. Allow your hands and your wrists and your elbows and your shoulders to let go of any extra effort. And allow your jaw to let go of any extra effort. And start to bring your awareness to your knees and your legs. And with the hoop gently, gently towards the ceiling, start to bring your knees a little to the left. Just your knees this time. And they may not go very far, and that's okay. And then towards the ceiling. And then start to repeat this movement, going only so far as it's easy to repeat, and allowing it to be slow, and knowing that it doesn't matter how far you go. It's the beginning of the movements in the Feldenkrais, the beginning of each movement that starts to make a difference and changes in the brain and in the nervous system and the body and the movement. So a little to the left, and notice what happens in the pelvis. Does the pelvis come along with the knees? Does one side of the pelvis press into the floor a little and one side lift? And do you feel it any higher up than the pelvis? Does your spine do anything, the vertebra of your spine? How high up your vertebra do you feel? So some of you may feel it up to your sacrum, which is just above your tailbone, and some of you may feel it a little bit in the lumbar vertebra, just above the sacrum. And some of you may even feel it a little higher up, and it doesn't matter how high you feel it, just starting to notice that. That's what matters, just noticing. Oh, I have some vertebra and they're turning with my knees, perhaps. Great, and now pause. And now bring your knees a little to the right. So same movement, other side, a little to the right and back. And allow it to be easy and let go of any extra effort. And are you breathing? Are you breathing? It doesn't matter how you are breathing, just that you are breathing. So are you breathing? And if you're not, please breathe. Sometimes in Feldenkrais, we direct the breath a certain way, but for this moment, it doesn't matter. Just notice that you are actually breathing. Okay. And then pause and actually lower your legs and lower your arms and take a rest. And in the rest, sometimes the Feldenkrais teacher will be silent, quiet. And sometimes the Feldenkrais teacher will talk and bring your awareness to certain parts of the body and certain differences from earlier. And sometimes the Feldenkrais teacher will talk about how Feldenkrais relates to, well, larger things in the world, other things outside of the body and life. And so any of those three, you might hear me say during a pause or do. Okay. And notice that space behind your low back. How is that now? Please bend your knees and stand your feet and bring the hoop back up towards the ceiling, allowing the hoop to be as easy and the shoulders to be as easy as they can be, letting go of any extra effort. And start to bring your knees a little to one side and a little to the other side. So they'll go through the center, beyond the midline. Doesn't matter how far they go, just a little one way and a little the other way. And allow it to be a slow, relatively slow movement if that's comfortable for your back. So it could take a whole second to go one direction, an entire second to come back up. No effort needed other than just to do a small movement. And what happens in the feet? What happens in the feet? Are the feet moving too? Okay. And what happens if you start to press the back of your pelvis on the side that you're going towards? So if you're going to the right, you could try pressing the back right side of the pelvis a little bit, just contacting it a little more towards the floor. And as you go to the left, start pressing the back left side of your pelvis a little more towards the floor. And what happens in your feet when you do that? Does one foot want to press more than the other? And start to bring your awareness to your feet pressing, and actually press the opposite foot, so that if you're going to the right, please press your left foot a little bit into the floor. And if you're going to the left, please press your right foot. And start to play with the feet that way. So you can initiate the movement from your knees, or your pelvis, or actually your feet. And in Feldenkrais, we use the words play and curious quite a bit. So allow it to be not like something you have to get right, but something you can play with a little bit. And then please lower your legs and lower your arms and take a rest. The rests are as important as the movements in Feldenkrais. During the rests, the brain integrates what it's learned. So we rest not because the movements are so challenging or taxing, but rather because they allow the brain and body to integrate. And sometimes there needs to be a rest because holding the arms up can get tiring. So there's a little of both, but the integration is the main piece of it. So notice the space behind your low back now. Okay. And please roll your head a little one way and a little the other way, just once, and see how that's going. Okay. And now, please bring your knees to bend and your feet flat on the floor again, and your arms in the hoop. And just once, bring the hoop a little one way and a little the other way, and see how that's going. See if anything's changed in how far down you feel that when you do just one movement, or how far you can easily go, or how soft your chest is. Okay. And then bring your arms a little, just a little to the right, to a point where you can actually hold it there. So it's going to stay a little off center, And in Feldenkrais, we call this a constraint. We use constraints quite a bit in Feldenkrais because when there's a constraint, something else has to learn to move around it. So with the arms a little to the right, now bring your knees a little one way and a little the other way. So the knees will start to go back and forth, and the knees might not go as far, and that's okay. That's really common with the constraints. The knees might not go as far, or you might feel something different, or a little, I want to say glitchy, but kind of a tension where it's, oh, I can't go any further. I don't want to go any further, for it to be an easy movement, and that's okay. You're breathing. Is the breath still flowing with the inhale and the exhale? It doesn't matter how, just that you're breathing. Okay. And bring everything back to neutral. Line everything back up to neutral. Pause in the center. And now, if you need to rest your arms, lower them. If you're okay with them, then we'll continue on to the next movement. Everyone has their arms up that I see. Okay. So bring your hoop a little to the left. To a point where you can hold it. And again, start to bring your knees a little left and a little right. And you may notice that your head does something, or that your eyes do something. And make sure you're breathing. It doesn't matter how far you go, or how big the movement is, just that it's comfortable and easy. Okay, now please pause in the center, bring everything back to the neutral. And now, just once, bring your arms a little one way and the arms a little the other way, and see how that goes. How is your neck doing that? Okay. And when your arms are back in the neutral position, lower your arms and lower your legs and take a rest. And notice how your breath is now. Notice anything else. And if at any time you've had enough, you can just pause and rest. And if you're up for more, we're gonna continue with a few more movements. Okay, so please, once again, bend your knees, stand your feet, and bring your arms into the hoop. Okay. And this time, bring your knees a little bit to the left and keep your knees there, just a point where you can keep them there easily, and start to bring the hoop a little left and a little right. And as you repeat the movement, you'll notice it may be different than earlier. You may find you're not going as far, or something stops in the spine because you have a twist now in your spine, and that's okay. Make sure that you're breathing. And notice where your head wants to go. Does your head want to go with the movement or opposite the movement? Okay, and now bring everything back to center and pause in the center and bring your knees the other way. Bring your knees a little to the right to a point where they can stay there. And with your knees to the right, start to bring your hoop a little right and a little left. And allow it to be an easy movement. And are you breathing? And can you let your chest be soft as you do the movement? And can you let your neck be soft and your jaw be soft? Okay. And can maybe even your eyes can be soft. It doesn't matter if your eyes are open or closed. Okay. Bring everything back to center. And lower, and actually before you lower your legs, so keep your legs up just once or twice. Bring the hoop a little left and right and see how that's going now. And if anything, feel a little more fluid in the hoop. Okay, and then lower your arms and lower your legs and take a rest. Notice that space behind your low back. And notice how your two shoulders contact the floor now. And even the two sides of your neck and the two sides of your face. And your eyes. And notice whatever you notice. And then roll your head a little once again, like you did earlier, a little one way and a little the other way, and see how that goes now. And is there anything different from earlier? And then when you come back to center, pause in the center. And now intentionally roll your head a little to the right. Doesn't matter how far you go. Roll your head to the right and look to the right as if there's something, somewhere along that wall that you want to see. It doesn't matter if you see how far down you see on the wall, just towards the wall and back to the ceiling with your eyes and your head coming together. Okay. And do that one more time to the right. Does your head lead the movement, or do your eyes? And your eyes can actually be open or closed, so you can look in that direction, whether they're open or closed. Okay, and now please look a little to the left and back, and with your eyes going with your head. And your eyes might lead the movement, or your head might lead the movement. And then pause in the center. Okay. And then bring your head and your eyes in opposite directions, but when you come back to center, see if they can align in the center. So I'm going to repeat that. Your head and your eyes will go opposite, but try to have them align in the center. So as they go through the center, they'll be there at the same time. And so you'll go left and right with your head, although much slower than that. Left, right. Your eyes will go the other way. They'll align in the center. And then pause in the middle. Okay. And for this next one, pick a point on the ceiling. And so you probably want to have your eyes open. If you're really tired and you can imagine a point, and you don't feel like opening your eyes, you can do that. But if you can open them and you feel like looking at the ceiling, find a point. And if there's nothing on your ceiling, you can just imagine a point, but even if your eyes are open. Okay, so you have a point on the ceiling. And keeping your eyes on this point, or this imaginary point, now please roll your head a little left and a little right. And it doesn't matter if you get it right. It's okay if it's not exactly right. Feldenkrais is not about getting it right. It's about the process. Okay. And then come back to neutral in the center and rest your head and rest your eyes. And then once again, look a little one way and look a little the other way. And this time you're going to go from one side to another side and just allow your eyes to come along. So your eyes might lead or your head might lead. Just see how that's going. And then pause in the center. And so for these next few movements, there's going to be some, what we call in Feldenkrais, differentiation. So essentially, things are going to go in different directions. And some of these may be really easy for you to do, and some of them may be difficult to do. So it's not about getting it right. It's just about the process. So don't worry if you can do it right or not. Your brain will learn something and take something away from it, whether or not you get it right. Okay. So please bend your knees, stand your feet, and bring your arms to the ceiling in a hoop. Great. Okay. And so I'm going to give you the instruction before you actually do it. Please bring your head and arms and knees and everything all in the same direction, and then back through the center and the other way. So basically everything is going to go one way and everything's going to go the other way. Okay, so start to do that, and you'll notice that your head may want to come along. Can you allow your head to come along? Can you allow your chest to be soft? Can you allow your jaw to be soft? Okay. And can you come back to neutral? Come back to neutral. Okay. And then for this next one, I'm going to tell you what it'll be before you do it. Your head and arms will go right and your knees will go left. So your head and arms go together, right, and your knees go left. So start to try that and then allow it to come back up through the center and to the other side. So then your head and arms will go left and your knees will go right. So start to play with that. And I say play, it doesn't have to be perfect or right. Just notice how that goes. There'll be a little twist in your spine as you do that. And maybe one more time to each side. And pause in the center. Okay, pause in the center. Okay. And this time, I'm going to tell you what you do. Actually, take a rest. Take a brief rest. Lower your arms, lower your legs. Take a rest. If you're up for it, I'm going to give you a couple more variations. Okay, but take a rest for a few more seconds. Okay, so if you're up for it, please bring your arms into the hoop and please bend your knees. And if you're not sure if you're up for it, please just rest. Okay, I see everyone who's on the video has their arms. Okay, so for this one, again, I'm going to tell you what you'll do before you do it. Everything will go to the right except your eyes. Your eyes will go left. And then you'll switch at the center and everything will go left except your eyes, which will go right. So essentially your eyes are going opposite, okay? So start to try that. So your arms and your head and your legs go left and your eyes go right. And then your head and legs and arms go right and your eyes go left. And cross over in the center. And so it might be a bit of a brain teaser for some of you, and that's okay. Okay, now pause in the center. Pause in the center. Okay, so I'm going to give you the instruction before you actually do it. Your hoop will go right. Your head will go right with your hoop. So head right, hoop right. Your knees and eyes will go left. So start to try that. I'm going to say it again as you do it. Your head goes right, your hoop goes right, your knees go left, and your eyes go left. Okay, and then you change over, and the hoop goes left, the head goes left, and your knees and eyes go right. Okay. Maybe one more time trying that. You don't have to get it right. Okay, and pause. Pause in the center. Okay. This time again, I'll tell you what you'll do before you do it. Let's see. This time your hoop will go. This one's going to be a little. Well, you'll see. You'll see. Okay. Your hoop will go right. Your eyes will go right. So you're just try that. Just try that part first. Just bring your hoop and your eyes right and nothing else, and see how that goes. And bring it back to neutral. And then bring your hoop and your eyes to the left. Nothing else, just your hoop and your eyes. And come back to neutral. And do that a couple of times actually. Hoop and eyes one way, allowing it to be as easy as it can be, and hoop and eyes go the other way and back to neutral. Great, great. And so with that one, okay, so your knees and your head will go together. So just move your knees and head for now. Your knees and your head will go together, and see how that is. And other things might come along a little bit, but basically your knees and your head go one way, and your knees and head go the other way. And see how that goes. Do it a couple times. Okay, and then we're gonna combine those two movements. And again, you don't have to get it right. The process itself will have an effect, even if you don't do it just right. Okay, so I'm gonna say it out loud, and you can follow along, or you can wait until I repeat it. So your hoop goes right, your eyes go right, your knees and head go left. And then you change over. So your hoop goes left, your eyes go left, and your knees and head go right. And I'm going to repeat that same instruction. Your hoop goes right, your eyes go right, your knees and head go left. And then you change over so that your hoop goes left, your eyes go left, and your knees and head go right. And play with that, and one more time on your own. And then let go of that, and keep your everything up, but let go of the movement, and just bring the hoop a little left and right, and see how that's going. Just the hoop, and maybe your head wants to come along, but let your knees be relatively still, and see how that's going. Okay, now lower your arms, please, and lower your legs, and take a full rest. And once or twice, just roll your head to one side and the other side, and see how that's going now. And is it any different from earlier, the first time you did it, beginning of the lesson? And pause and let go of any extra effort. And notice the space behind your low back. And notice the two sides of your pelvis. And notice the two shoulders, how they contact the floor now. And notice how your head contacts the floor now compared to earlier. Does it feel like the floor meets it a little more? It meets the floor more. And your spine. And your breath. And your mind, or perhaps even your heart. How are they now? And then take an overall picture. How are you in this moment? And when I say the word midline, when you hear the word midline, just notice what happens. Midline. If you were to draw a line from above your head to below your feet, through your midline, just notice how fuzzy or clear that line feels to you now. And let go of even that effort. And just be. Take a minute or so, and I'll instruct you in about a minute to get up, and I'm going to turn my voice off until that time. So slowly bend one leg, bend the other leg, roll to your side. See if you can let your jaw be soft as you roll to your side and you come to a sitting position. And then when you're ready, and as you're ready, taking your time, you can come to standing. Notice if getting up feels a little different than it felt to come down to the floor. And in standing, I'm going to bring some possibilities up. You might feel something, you might not. So notice if you feel taller or shorter. Either one can happen after a Feldenkrais lesson. Do you feel taller or shorter? Do you feel lighter or heavier? Do you feel like the floor meets you differently now and you meet the floor differently? You may literally be standing on a different part of your feet now. So your weight is distributed differently, organized differently. And notice how your shoulders and your head feel. Do your shoulders feel any different? Like, does your chest feel more open, or your head feel any lighter on your shoulders than it did earlier? And when you're ready, start to walk around. And some people may want to walk really slowly, mindfully, and some people may want to walk quickly to feel how the quicker, swifter movements feel. Either one can be useful, whatever will allow you to notice. And can you allow your arms to be free and move, swing a little bit? And it may be difficult if your space is really small, but can your arms swing and notice how that affects your movement in your spine and your whole movement? And can your pelvis move? And can I know this goes against so much of what you've probably heard before, but can your belly be soft? Can you walk with a soft belly and see how that affects your movement, particularly the pelvis movement? Okay. And one last question, is your horizon any different? Like where you're looking, the level of the horizon, is it any different than earlier? Okay, 2 more questions. And how's your breath? How's your breathing? And when you're ready, please come back to the room. It's 7:29. So if someone needs to scoot, please leave right away. And if you want to gather, I have time. I would love to meet for 5 more minutes if people can, but I understand if you need to leave. Oh my gosh, I want to say welcome back and welcome to, for some of you, your first Feldenkrais lesson. Oh my goodness, oh my goodness. Wow. All right. So 2 options now. Sometimes in Feldenkrais, it's really nice to just be quiet and let it integrate and not go right into your head, talking and thinking and describing. So if you want to just be quiet, please be quiet. And sometimes it can be really nice to share what you notice and state it out loud, or to hear what other people have to say. Oh yeah, I didn't realize I'm actually feeling that too. And sometimes it can be helpful to ask questions like, gosh, what about this or what about that? So I would love to, if you want to stay for 5 minutes, to hear any questions or shares, what you notice or what you may be wondering about. And you could just unmute yourself if you want to talk and say something, and if you don't want to, you can be quiet also. You can also put a word in the chat. Sometimes that you can share without having to be so verbal. You can write, I feel this, or I noticed that, or blah, blah, blah. So the chat is also an option. Since we're on Zoom, we have that. In person, we don't have chat.
So I know that when you told us to stand up, I felt my body was shorter and heavier, and I could definitely tell my feet had more weight in them or something. I felt more flat-footed as I stood up.
Mhm.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
when you said find your midline, my midline was way to the left.
Mm.
Not significantly, but noticeably left.
Mhm. Okay. Would you like me to comment on that, or do you just want to
Sure.
share?
Yes.
Okay. So in terms of the weight, did it feel like more weight on your feet, more weight in a good way?
Yeah,
Like
not
solid, more here.
yes, in a good way, not in a bad way.
Okay, okay. That's very common, very, very, very common after a Feldenkrais lesson. And some people feel lighter, like, wow, I feel really light and I can just kind of float. Not floaty like floaty out there, but lighter, easier, lighter. And some people feel much more like I'm here, I'm grounded, and either can happen. And um my opinion, my whatever interpretation of it all in a nutshell is that you're using your skeleton more. In a Feldenkrais lesson, part of the learning is to use your skeleton more to support you and your muscles less. So your muscles work less. You may have noticed I was constantly saying, less effort, less this, less effort, blah, blah. Can you let go of this? Can you soften that? So the muscles learn to use less effort and the skeleton supports you more. So that's, and then,
I had feeling like that, but it was kind of different. My lower half, I felt two parts of my body. My lower part felt heavier and grounded. My feet were grounded, but my upper felt like I was a foot taller and it was light from the, like, this is a strange feeling, and not a bad feeling, but it was different. Like when you said midline, I felt more midline across the stomach. Top was different. My bottom is kind of strange.
okay, okay. So yes, the heavier below, lighter above can also happen because, again, if the skeleton is supporting you more and the muscles don't have to work as hard, things are reorganizing, and it can be easier to be upright. Again, in a nutshell, and midline, right? It will mean different things to different people for all sorts of reasons. The midline changing and feeling like it's very to the left. Two things. One, I don't know why, and again, without getting more information, I can't say exactly why that is. But what I can say, the second answer is that after a Feldenkrais lesson, things reorganize, and so if one's pattern, I'm gonna just do a little visual so you can see. If one's pattern is to be like this, and if after a Feldenkrais lesson you're like this, it may feel at first like you're like this. Well, not quite, but you're like this, even though you're really like, just neutral. So neutral is really is affected. One's perception of neutral is very much affected by where you were before. So often, oh yeah.
So, thank you.
Yeah, sure. So I hope that's helpful in response. Anyone else have something they'd like to share? Something that you noticed? Does anyone not feel different after the lesson? No. Anyone feel worse after the lesson? Okay. All right. Anyone feel better after the lesson?
Yes. My back was hurting. My back's been hurting for a couple of days and it feels better. Okay. Just that small movement. I don't know.
I know. And it makes complete sense to me. It makes total sense to me. Does it feel a little softer in your back? Like a little easier?
Without a doubt. It's been my glutes and my lower back, and they feel very much relaxed. So
good.
Yep.
Good. So yeah, it makes sense to me. And these movements, particularly this lesson and any beginner Feldenkrais lesson, the movements are often pretty simple. I mean, you saw the movements are pretty simple. And yet, because of the way they're sequenced and a whole variety of reasons, they can have quite a dramatic effect. That's why one of the reasons why I'm so excited about Feldenkrais. These simple little things we're doing can have such a major effect. And it can have a different effect for different people. I taught this lesson to someone who I don't think she'd ever done any Feldenkrais before. And she got up and said, "Oh my gosh, my knees in alignment. What did she see? Osteopath has been trying to like do something to my knee for, multiple times. And finally now it's like in alignment from this lesson. And it's not even focused so much on the knees, but when my guess is her pelvis and her ankles were more in alignment. A lot of other things were more in alignment. And so it allowed the knee to finally go where it could be more organized. Yeah. So my point is the same lesson can have different effects on different people, depending on what's going on with you in that moment. And you could do the same lesson tomorrow and notice something different. So it'll be like peeling layers of an onion. So if there's something you remember from today's lesson that you enjoyed, you can repeat that. You just lie on your back on the floor and repeat it, and it will start to bring those pathways back in the brain. It's really about changing habits. And so the more you do it, the more you'll start to create new pathways in the brain and body. So yeah, optional homework would be to, whatever you like with the lesson, to start doing that whenever you want. Once a day, once a week isn't much, but it will have some effect. One of the dogs drinking water back here, if you hear it. Anything else you want to share or ask?
I don't know if any other people had an issue, but with the eyes going opposite in the head, stuff like that, it was great. It feels okay now, but it was a lot of strain. It's like I had to take a little break from that. I mean, it's on the eye movement. That's the only thing I felt uncomfortable with, was going opposite with the eye movement, because you don't do that often, so.
Right. Do you wear glasses or contacts or have any eye?
Yeah, I wear both for reading and.
Right. So yes, that can be new for people. I'm glad you rested when you noticed that. That's really important. And my experience, if a person does wear glasses or have any eye issues, challenges, then the eye movements are going to be a little more challenging. I wouldn't say it's true across the board, but I've seen that many times. And there's many Feldenkrais lessons that work with the eyes. And yeah, there could be a whole series just on the eyes. And some of it would be eye movements, and some of it would be how the eyes relate to other movements in the body. So today was a little of both of that.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say one last thing. The eye muscles have a strong connection with the neck muscles, and a very strong connection to early developmental movements. And the babies want to see something, and so the eye is very important.
So I started by closing my eyes until you said, follow with your eyes. Mm-hmm. So are there any implications for keeping your eyes closed, or is that something you don't want to do? Or
so I forgot to say at the beginning of this lesson, it's in this lesson, for most of it, it's fine if your eyes are open and it's fine if they're closed. And people in Feldenkrais ATM classes generally do whatever they feel like doing, whatever's comfortable for you. And if it's important that they be open or closed, the teacher will say so. And often, so usually people close their eyes for a lesson, maybe because they can focus and sense a little more easily, or maybe because it's just you're lying on the floor and it's a little more relaxing. But really people do both. And sometimes it's nice to have your eyes open. This is a little more advanced, but it's nice to have your eyes open So you can start to learn to integrate the movements and the changes with your eyes open, and like as you relate to space, as you relate to your external environment. But again, that's a little more advanced. I wouldn't worry about it in this or any of the 4 lessons that I'll be teaching. And so it doesn't really matter unless it does, in which case teacher would say so.
Okay, great. Thank you. This was great. I loved it.
I'm glad. I'm glad. Thank you so much for being here. And it says MA's iPhone. What is? Let's see, Catherine. Thank
I
you.
had to, yeah, Mary Ann. I was on my computer, died.
Oh, right.
I phoned in with my phone. Yeah. So,
Right. That's right. Okay. Great having both of you. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for sharing too.
Yeah.
So I just want to share that about Alison's classes, 4 Tuesdays in November, 7th, 14th, 21st, and 28th at this time, 6:30 to 7:30. She'll be going a whole lot deeper into Feldenkrais. So if you got value out of today, I know I did. I felt walking around, I felt completely different. My body felt completely different, and it's really interesting to notice. And also in the lying down, when I was moving my head, just noticing how much more flexible it was. Yeah, it was great. But for more information on that series, I'm just sharing a link in the chat. And also, Alison has a space in our online community. I'll share that link in our chat as well. If you're not a member of our online community, I definitely encourage you to join it. Lots of opportunities for free contemplative practice, including with Alison. And yeah, so that's the link for her space in our online community, which is Feldenkrais and Sound Asleep, which is working on helping you sleep better. So
based in Feldenkrais. So.
What's that?
Based in Feldenkrais.
Based
yeah.
in Feldenkrais. There you go.
Feldenkrais is the foundation. It takes it into the direction of sleep.
So yeah. I'm trusting I'm going to sleep really well tonight, but we'll find out. Yeah. So thank you very much, Alison. That was wonderful.
Thank you so much, Jamie. Thank you, and still Mindfulness for having me. Thank you, everybody who is here this evening. It's really a joy sharing Feldenkrais with you.